Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of my 1951 Gravely Model L series. We're just trying to see if this tractor is going to run. If you recall, in episode 1, we put some new wheels on it so we could roll this thing around. Looked at the gas tank, realized that was rusty, and we're going to need to address that. But mainly, we took the magneto off and we cleaned and adjusted the points so the magneto would fire. Now, some of you were probably pretty sharp when you watched episode 1 and realized that the points didn't look like they were lined up right because I put a washer where it didn't belong. I didn't even realize it until I was editing and I noticed it, so I went back in, took the cover off the magneto, I fixed it, and now everything's as it should be. So the next thing we need to do is I need to install a new oil filter mount and I need to run some new oil lines. So I've got this oil filter spin-on mount off of my updated 43. I'm going to go ahead and use that just to try to start it. Reason being, this is an old oil filter, but it will work. I don't want to throw a new oil filter on it and then have to just throw it in the trash because I've put a bunch of old oil through the thing. What we're going to have to do is run some new oil lines, not only because we're going to put a spin-on filter here, but because this thing, as you can see, is not plumbed correctly for a low volume pump. And it does have the low volume pump on it. So I'm going to have to run one line from the oil pump. I'm going to have to install a T-fitting here, go from the T-fitting to the inlet in the new oil filter, and from the outlet of the new filter over here to the pressure relief valve. So let's go ahead and get to work on that. Okay, in order to give myself some room to work here, I took the bolts off the magneto. I'm going to get that out of my way. I'm going to use a flare nut wrench to take the lines off. I'm going to need a 7/16 socket and an extension to get the oil filter mount off, and a flat blade screwdriver because I want to pull this air intake tube off of here, give myself some more room to work down there. And here's everything we need to make new oil lines for the tractor. We've got a coil of 1/4 inch copper clad tubing, got a tube bender, a tube cutter, and an assortment of fittings and compression sleeves. So let's go ahead and kind of look at the process of bending one of them, and then I'll just go ahead and do the rest on my own. Okay, what I'm going to do is start off with a section of line that's intentionally way too long. This is actually some leftover from the last coil that I had. And we're just going to start off, pick an end, and start off there. So I'm going to start off here, figure about how long it needs to be, and that's going to have to bend 90 degrees up right there. Then we're going to put the tube in the tube bender, and we're going to real slow and nice like give it a 90-degree bend. And we're going to check and make sure that is good. If need be, we can trim this end off. That's not a problem. See, it's a little too long, but you kind of have to make sure you got enough in the bender to make it work. And then we're going to have to get up to about here and make the next bend. Like that, and that's going to bend forward. Bend it a little bit and test it. I don't want to overbend this thing. I think it's going to work out all right. A little more bend in it. Not a whole lot, just a little bit more. I probably shouldn't try to get too particular with this because I'm going to have to put a new line in if I change this fitting out. Let's shorten this up a little bit. I want this inside of that engine bolt. Just get our tube cutter out, put the tube cutter on, take off as much as we need. Always found it best just to take off a little at a time. I can always go back and take off more if I need to. And remember, these lines are flexible. They don't have to be absolutely perfect. Once you trim that, you take your little deburring tool. You just deburr the inside of this line. Let's check it again. I think we're almost there. That looks good. Now we're going to cut this line right about to here. Put our tube cutter right where we need it. And we're just going to give this a little cut. And give it a little deburr. And let's see how this works. It'll fit in there. There, that will work. Okay, so now we're going to take a couple of these little compression sleeves here, because we don't flare this tubing. We use compression sleeves and compression nuts. So we're going to slide a compression nut on first, sleeve on second. We're going to do that on both ends. Compression nut, compression sleeve. And we're going to install this in one end. We're just going to hand tighten it for now. And then slide the tube into the other end. Slide up our compression nut. Now we can go ahead and tighten this down. You don't want to get crazy on tightening these. You can over tighten them and crack these little compression nuts. So I recommend, I don't know, just a little bit. Flare nut wrench is a pain right now. I would recommend just a little bit beyond snug. I'd get them both snugged up first, and it will tighten up a little bit more at first because of that compression nut. Like I said, you don't want to over tighten it. You just want to get it good and snug. That's the first line. So now I'll go ahead, I'll bend the rest of the lines, and when we come back, I'll show you how it all looks. Okay, we've got all the oil lines run. We've got a line going from the oil pump to a T-fitting in the side of the engine block, from the T-fitting to the input side of the oil filter, from the output side of the oil filter, right to the pressure relief valve. So next thing we have to do is go ahead and add some motor oil. On these old machines, you don't have a dipstick to check the oil level. But what you do have is a little petcock right down here on the side of the transmission. So you open this up, and then you add your motor oil until it starts dribbling out there, and that's how you know it's full. So let's go ahead and put some oil in this. I don't have new motor oil for it. What I have is just Well, some used motor oil from my truck. And all we're doing is just putting some oil in here to go ahead and get it started. So when I go to start it, you know, it's full of oil. And this will work for that time being. I wouldn't run it for a long period of time with this in it. Of course, I wouldn't run it with a long period of time with that old oil filter either. It's probably going to take a fair amount of oil, so I'm pretty sure everything I had in there drained out the front. Of course, that petcock could be clogged too. That's an awful lot of oil to be in there and not be dribbling out that petcock. I've got a suspicion that petcock is plugged. Or quite frankly, I forgot to open it.
What an idiot!
Yep, petcock itself is plugged up. You see all the dirt in there, and it is dribbling out, so it's full. I have to get a pick and clean that out at some point. Okay, now it's time to go ahead and prime that oil pump, because I want to make sure when I do get around to starting this that we have oil flowing right away. And I made a video on how to do this earlier, and I'll put a link to it in the description, but the long and short of it is you disconnect the far end of whatever oil line is coming out of that oil pump. Make sure you've got a compression sleeve on there. You just take one of these big syringes and a rubber tube, slide this over the little compression sleeve, and you're just going to pull out or pull back on this syringe until you get oil that comes through. It may take a bit because sometimes this doesn't seal up so well, so it takes several attempts to get this done. You can see we just got a little bit of oil dribbling out now. So we know we got oil in the oil pump. Go ahead and hook this back up. If you don't have a syringe, you can also get a long tube and just clean it up real well, put the other end in your mouth and try to siphon some oil through that way. There's several ways to do this. This is just the way that I found it seems to be about the easiest for me. Okay, folks, we got the oil lines ran, making sure the oil pump worked. I got the magneto reinstalled. Strangely enough, I pulled the spark plug, cleaned it, gapped it, and the plug that came on the tractor is firing. Now, I have not addressed the fuel issue with the machine yet, but I am dying to know if there is enough compression for this thing to fire up, even with some carb cleaner, because it doesn't feel like a whole lot of compression here. So I'm going to shoot some carb cleaner in there, and I'm going to give her a pull, and I want to see if it pops off or not. Because if it doesn't, then I know I'm going to have to do some other stuff to it. I'm impressed. It will fire off on carb cleaner. I think once I get the carburetor fixed and get some gas running through there, I think it is going to run without a problem. It's loud as heck because the exhaust is pretty much missing, but that's a good sign. I kind of feel like I cheated a little bit. I didn't want to try to start it until I had the carb done and the fuel situation solved, but just couldn't resist. This looks like as good a place as any to wrap up episode 2. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you on episode 3.